Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Titan File webinar. Thank you so much for joining on this lovely Friday afternoon. Hopefully, I am not the only thing between you and the weekend. We're going to spend a good 45 minutes together here and cover some really interesting content and show you a really great demo. So just to make sure you're at the right place, this is the Secure File Sharing for Today's Law Firms webinar, part of the ILTA series. My name is Victor Abouassale, and I'm going to be your host for the next 45 to 60 minutes. So let's just go through a couple of housekeeping rules before we get started. So there's going to be everybody, as you can see, is going to be muted throughout the presentation just to keep the flow going. There is a chat function and a questions function available in the GoToWebinar application there. If you'd like to ask something, please do so. I have a moderator with me, so we're going to try to address the questions as we go. Forgive me if we miss something or don't get a chance to. We will for sure have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, where we'll read out the questions for everybody's benefits and answer them together. So there will be the last 15 or 20 minutes or so will be the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So the format for today, we're going to go through a little bit of content at the beginning, just talk about the benefits of secure file sharing, why you should have a solution in place at your organization. My favorite part, one of my favorite parts of the session is going to be the top 10 features, product checklist. So this is a compilation of features or capabilities that we often get asked from clients. So this is our view based on what clients tell us. So it's a very interesting perspective. This is what law firms are telling us they want in the solution. And then the two other items there, legal technology toolkit and how to evaluate cloud vendors. We'll talk about that a little bit, where secure file sharing fits in within that, within the law firm, and ultimately common questions or things that we frequently get asked as a service provider by big clients, whether it's an AmLaw 200 firm or a bank. So maybe just some service providers when you're looking at going into business with them. And then, so that'll take about the first 20 or 30 minutes of the session. And then halfway through, we're going to switch into a live demonstration of Titan File. I'm going to show you from start to finish, really focusing on the ease of use, what it looks like to send something through Titan File, and what it looks like for first-time recipients and that whole user experience. I think that's really going to drive home the value of having something like this in place. So that's also a very exciting portion. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Just want to introduce myself, I guess, so that you can put a face to the name. This is me. I'm Victor. I'm the Director of Business Development at Titan File. I've been in legal tech for about 5 or 6 years. I run the monthly ILTA webinar series here at Titan File, and I'm client-facing. So I work on a daily basis with hundreds of law firms all around the world, US, Canada, Europe. And I am a solution expert at Titan File, so if there's anything you want to know about file sharing, I'm the guy to ask, and I'll be surprised if I haven't had the question before, and I'd love to share with you the insights that I've compiled over working with hundreds of clients over the years. So as I mentioned, there's going to be lots of really good things in this webinar for you to catch, and hopefully there will be some takeaways you can take back and share with your teams. If you don't get anything, I'm a huge sushi enthusiast, and I've been to a lot of the cities in the US and Canada. So if you ever need a recommendation on where to grab a good sushi when you're traveling, feel free to ask me that offline. I'd be happy to share with you some recommendations as well. So that's a little bit about me. To give you a background about Titan File, I know I saw on the attendee list there's some firms that we don't currently work with, so that's great. Just to give you a little bit of background on the company, we're about 7 years old. We're actually based out of Canada, just a little bit north of the border in Toronto, great city. We've got over 90,000 professionals worldwide using Titan File right now. So lots of coverage all over the world in various regions. And you may have seen us at the major conferences. We're regulars at the ILTACon, LegalSec. We're going to be in Arlington, I believe, middle of June, so you could see us there as well, and Legal Tech. So we've been at these conferences for the last 5 or 6 years regularly. So I'm sure you have seen our booth. Before we dig in a little bit further, I thought just to get a little bit of a better picture of our attendee pool today, just want to know the demographic so that we can focus on certain things, whether it's tech or otherwise. So I'm just going to launch a poll here on the screen real quick, and just want to get your opinion. What's your role at your organization? Are you in the IT world? Are you support staff? Are you a lawyer? Or maybe an admin in management? So I'm just going to leave that up for just 5 or 6 more seconds to make sure we get a good cross-section of voters. And looks like we're about 90% voted. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And just for your benefit, this is what everybody responded. So we're about a 50-50 split, half IT focused and across the board in other areas. So that's great. We have a really good diverse group. Fantastic. And then maybe just another question. Since this is a secure file sharing webinar, before we get into the nitty-gritty details, what is everybody using today in your firms? I believe you're allowed to select more than one if you are. Obviously, we know Dropbox is very, very popular out there. Some organizations are relying on FTP solutions still. You may have an enterprise tool in place. You may be sending things by DVDs and USBs when it's related strictly to large files. And you may be having the painstaking efforts of having to break up large documents into multiple emails. I know that's really, really painful. I had to do that once, and it was not a pleasant experience. Okay, looks like we have about 90% again. That's great. Thank you for participating. Let's put those results up. And this is what it looks like today. So keep in mind, people may have answered or selected more than one, which is completely normal. But we got a little bit of everything being used. And I think that's probably no secret today. And it's great to see that a lot of people have some sort of enterprise file sharing tool in place today. So hopefully that's working well. If not, there's lots of options out there. Hint, hint. Okay, let's go on. Done with the polls for now. Let's keep the energy going. You may recognize some of these logos. We work with lots of really great firms, as I mentioned, all across North America, as well as with government organizations. So lots of really great advocates for the Titan File platform out there. So just to put things in context, when would you use Titan File, or in general, a file sharing solution? So this is how I like to position it. There's really two instances that I like to group where a file sharing solution could be really used. And it could be across any practice area. But essentially, anything that you could not send outside of the firm or receive from outside of the firm by email due to either or both security and compliance requirements, let's group that as privacy, and secondly, file size restrictions, so big files. So the two times where we see most of our clients using Titan File, or in generally a file sharing solution, is either there's a privacy requirement to make sure the information is protected, or two, they have a functional problem where there's a big file that needs to go, and either you as the sender can't send it, or the recipient has restrictions. You know, often you see, you know, a law firm will say, well, we have a 50 or 100 megabyte attachment limit, so we can send pretty much anything. But the problem is, and I'm sure for all the IT folks in the room, the recipient may have a restriction, and if they've set it to the more traditional file size attachment limit on your email, like 25 megabytes, they're not going to be able to get that from you. So just some very basic issues that people run into on a daily basis. So keep those two things in mind as we go through the webinar. Privacy requirement, functional problem. That's where a file sharing solution is really needed. Okay, so benefits. Why have a file sharing solution and how does it help? So these are the three things that we see our clients tell us in testimonials and success stories and case studies. These are the three things that we keep coming back to every single time. Every time I try to get a case study out with maybe a different angle, we get three things back from the client consistently. And really they're focused around productivity, trust, and efficiency. So let's talk about the first one first. Productivity. Things like enabling digital collaboration with a client, having an online portal where you can quickly share things back and forth in real time, regardless of how sensitive they are, regardless of what the file size is or the number of files you're sharing. Being able to communicate instantly in 2018 is absolutely critical. And that's the productivity piece. Similarly, making sure it hooks into your existing systems, like DMS, making sure it works nice with iManage or another document management system you're using, making sure there's an Outlook capability that you can do things at your fingertips from Outlook. These are very, very important items from a productivity perspective. Client trust, again, that one of the two major prongs is privacy. So today, with HIPAA, with GDPR, privacy is the big buzzword, as it should be, and hopefully people are taking it very, very seriously. But being able to do business not just instantly, quickly, and digitally, but making sure it's done with the best-in-class security, best-in-class privacy controls in place to make sure that your client's data is protected as you'd like your data being protected. Last but not least, everybody's always looking to save a buck. So let's try to find ways to do things quicker. Let's try to find ways to make things cheaper. So if we can eliminate overhead, things like overloading the help desk with very simple tasks like sending a large file, that seems ridiculous. Still having to send stuff down to the mailroom and getting somebody to actually, copy a file onto a CD or a USB stick and mailing that. Shouldn't have to do that in 2018 at all. And FTP, still widely used, really great tool for people that know how to use it, especially IT folks. But when you bring it to the end user, to the legal professional, to their support staff, it's traditionally not a user-friendly tool. So the benefit of all this, if we kind of want to wrap it back together, keeping people productive, making sure that they're doing things in a private and secure way, and making it super simple for those non-technical users. I always like to focus on the non-technical users because we as techies can figure anything out with a few minutes, but a lawyer or an attorney doesn't have the same attention span or even desire to have to go through and deal with these inefficient systems, and then people will adopt it and they'll embrace it. All right. Favorite part of the session, or maybe it competes with the demo a little bit for the favorite part of the session. Top 10 features. This is the product checklist. This is what our clients keep telling us. Every time we go into a room where somebody's evaluating Titan File as a potential service provider, these are the top 10 things that keep coming back in business requirement documents. And I highly recommend you have a business requirement document when you go to market looking for a solution. Whether you're looking at us or somebody else, have that document standardized. Here are the 10 things that we keep getting back and forth. Number 1, top 10 list, easy to use. Seems like it's a no-brainer, but what does it actually mean? People say we want something easy to use. If we unpack that buzzword, this is what it really means. So making sure that it's really as easy as email. If it's any more complicated than Outlook, people are not going to use it. Secondly, web browser agnostic. If the user wants to use IE, Chrome, Safari, Edge, Firefox, any of those should be okay, whether it's you or the recipient. So making sure that you can use it on anything that's really modern out there from a web browser perspective. Third, make sure it's web-based. If you have to download software, or if you're going to force your client to download software, not going to get adoption. So let's keep it simple, keep it web-based, make it accessible. 4, mobile ready. Again, primarily people are using things in the office these days, but if you're on the go, on the way to court, or on the way to an airport, and you get a file, let's make sure there's a way for you to open it and there's a workable mobile version allowing that mobile access. And last but not least, again, this one's for the techies. From a security perspective, if your firms ever work with a big bank or a major client, you may get a lot of pushback, or maybe even in the security questionnaires, about using a solution that has Java. So a lot of large file sharing solutions out there today have a Java uploader to be able to handle large files. This is a no-no with any major organization that you work with because of all the security vulnerabilities there. So make sure that whatever system you're using, they have a native way to be able to handle large files without having to use vulnerable systems like Java. Number 2, large file transfer. If you're looking for a large file transfer solution, let's make sure it can do exactly that. So look for things that offer unlimited file size. I'm talking things, unlimited is a big word, but realistically, if you need to send a 25 gigabyte production file, you should be able to do that and not have to resort to, sending it on a USB stick or a hard drive. So 25 gigabytes seems pretty reasonable. Make sure your solution can handle that. Unlimited storage, and make sure it can handle any file type, whether it's video, audio, images, office documents, production files, anything you can think of should be able to go through the system. That's a simple one. And a good follow-on to that is, okay, if we're looking for a large file sharing system, let's make sure it can do large files very, very well. So performance, people often overlook, but you need to make sure that, back in the day, you used to have to upload a file before you go home and let it run overnight because it takes hours to get that file onto your file sharing solution. And some of you may be laughing right now, but that's the truth. In today's world, in 2018, the system should be able to upload gigabytes in minutes. So do some benchmark testing, do some testing when you're evaluating, a free trial, and make sure that you can actually do large files gracefully and efficiently. We talked about making it easy to use. So Outlook add-ins are very, very popular these days. So as you can see here, I'm just putting up a screenshot from what our solution has. So there's a secure send button that we can include in the Outlook ribbon if you choose to install it. And it's super simple. You compose an email like you normally would. The only difference is instead of hitting I'm moving my cursor here, instead of hitting the send button with Outlook, you hit the secure send button with Titan File. And you can send large files, they're encrypted, you get audit trails, you get a notification when people open it, and so on. So really, really good tool, especially for those non-frequent users. So if you have heavy users and light users, your light users are going to absolutely love the Outlook plugin if it works. So make sure it works. All right, moving along, halfway through the top 10 checklist. Security, of course, security. So what to look for when you're digging in into the security covers of your service provider. So end-to-end encryption. So today's industry standard, table stakes, bare minimums, are encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Probably using TLS for the transit connection, and it's hopefully using a 256-bit encryption key at rest. Now, keep in mind that depending on the organization you're working with and depending the type of data that you're sending, you may be required to have additional protection above and beyond what the minimum standards are. We come across this often. We have clients that move around, that are under PCI compliance. So they're moving around financial information, could include credit card information, could include information that requires yet another level of protection. And what do we have for that? It's something called key management, external key management. The Titan File short form for that, is CSE, or client-side encryption. And essentially what that is it provides another level of protection where an external party is actually holding the keys to the encrypted files. So we, as the service provider, cannot physically or technically view any of your files, even for maintenance reasons. So yet another level of protection where there's a third party involved and another level of separation. And so we do that through the Hitachi Credion key management solution. And it works really, really well and super seamless. And finally, make sure that when you're looking at security that your service provider, if you are using their secure cloud option, that they are using certified data centers, whether it's Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, and so on. Those are typically the two popular ones today. Okay, moving along, number 6, authentication. So big firms, typically use single sign-on. They want the application to be authenticated using their corporate credentials. So one less step for the user to have to, memorize another password. Let's just use the corporate credentials to log in. So having single sign-on is very, very important. And also having the ability for two-factor authentication. So if your firm today uses two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication across other applications, you probably want to make sure that this additional application you add also does that. Data residency and data retention. So this is a really, really big one, specifically from a compliance perspective. The biggest fear when I speak with IT directors and CIOs on a daily basis, the biggest fear is that the file sharing solution ends up becoming a data dump. It becomes yet another place that users put stuff in there and don't clean it up. And this is one of the issues, is that if you make the solution so easy to use, people are actually going to use it. And so if they start using it, they're going to start putting data in there, and you need to have controls in place to make sure that there's some auto cleanups so that stuff is not being stored there forever. And so you want to have a data retention policy that ensures that your document management system remains the #1 location where stuff is being stored. That's the master digital repository. The file sharing solution should only be a bridge or a temporary location when you are collaborating or delivering files between you and the external party. So look into that data retention policy, make sure there's things that you can set and you can control for how long. And so Titanfile definitely has a retention policy, very, very customizable. Make sure that you control how long stuff stays in there. And then if you have data residency requirements, if you're a Canadian law firm, you probably have to have your data in Canada. If you're a US firm, you probably want your data in the US. So make sure that your vendor offers you the option to store the data in the region that you need to have it. I know now with GDPR, our European clients have their requirements too. So having different geographical locations is very, very important. Number 8 on the top 10 lists, notifications and history. So what I mean by this is, again, from a HIPAA compliance perspective, you want to make sure that there's an audit trail that shows you when stuff has been accessed and by whom. And the other thing that our clients really care about is proving that something was delivered or sent by a specific deadline. So have that audit trail easily accessible, make sure it's exportable, and having email notifications letting you know when files are being opened can be really, really helpful. So look for those in your product checklist when you're doing your homework. I mentioned, the first one, the first item was easy to use, and when you unpack that, making sure that it works with existing systems. So if you're using a file sharing system, ultimately those files are going to be living probably either in the DMS or on a network drive somewhere. So make sure there is an easy way to get stuff in and out of the file sharing platform that you're going to be using. So having some integration in place, whether it's with iManage, eDocs, NetDocs, WorldDocs, whatever the case may be, have some integration available and ask your vendors about that because it could really make adoption much simpler and make that one less step for your user group when they're using the platform. Last but not least, being able to export stuff. So whether it's you need to keep a copy of a message that was sent to you, whether you need to archive an entire communication or transaction that you conducted with opposing counsel or with a client, keeping a copy of that history. Have the ability to be able to export stuff really easily is very important. That's another one of the top 10 things that keeps being asked by our clients, is being able to pull things out as easily as being able to put things in to the platform. So that is the top 10 checklist that we see day in and day out. Maybe during the Q&A, if there are things that you're looking for that weren't on here, would love to get your feedback. And if you agree with the stuff that I've been saying here, that's great. That means the industry is moving in a uniform direction, which is awesome. All right, let's keep moving. We're going to get to the demo very, very shortly, so hang in there with me. All right, technology toolkit. So I just wanted to position Titanfile within the toolkit, or even a file sharing solution, maybe even more broadly. So here's where we see it today. This is, I know this might be funny to some, but that guy up at the top, doing the face palm, it's not too far-fetched. Your everyday professional, in addition to dealing with law, they have a plethora of roadblocks to having to do their work that they're really good at. And when we're talking about communication, they have all kinds of options at their disposal, things like email, regular courier. Believe it or not, people are still using fax, which drives me nuts. I don't even know, used to, back in the day, if somebody used to send you a fax, I'd have to go to a convenience store next door who actually has a fax machine. They don't even have fax machines anymore. So this may be a little bit outdated here. And then, of course, things like Dropbox and Dropbox-like solutions, things that they bring from home, stuff that they're used to using in their personal life, tend to migrate into the business environment because that's just what they're used to. And as a matter of fact, not to take anything away from Dropbox, it's really easy to use. So your everyday professional has a lot of options, but there's issues with these options. They're cumbersome, they disperse the information, they could be slow if you're using traditional methods, and there could be privacy and security issues associated with the personal solutions that they're bringing from home, especially if they're not corporate accounts owned by the law firm. And so our vision was to simplify this and really show that, this isn't the future, this is today. Today, there's an easy way for you to be able to communicate securely for when you cannot use email with your clients. And that is Titan File. It's making it simple, it's making it fast, making sure that it's secure, and ultimately meeting all your compliance requirements, whether it's HIPAA, GDPR, or PIPEDA in Canada. So that's all I'll say about that. Last section here about cloud vendors. So this is what we often get asked. So every time we work with a big firm, a big law firm or a bank, we get a massive information security questionnaire. Sometimes, it's a standard document that we've seen before. Sometimes the law firm has made their own, and it's like 72 questions and 32 pages and asking all kinds of things. Really, it comes down to four things. This is, in general, what people are really trying to assess. And what the industry we find, big firms, banks, law firms, accounting firms, this is what they're really trying to assess. They want to look at four things. They want to make sure that you're using best-in-class infrastructure and that there's going to be some guaranteed uptimes, that you're using a well-known provider like AWS, Azure, making sure there's redundancies, making sure that part of redundancies and uptime, it's making sure it's available 24/7, disaster recovery, stuff that ties into that business continuity plan. That's really the bulk of the infrastructure component. Then you get the application. They look at the application, they say, okay, you've got, we looked at security, what kind of encryption is being used, what kind of authentication capabilities are there, what kind of audit records are there. And then the one thing that ties application infrastructure together is third-party audits. So we are required by our clients to provide an external penetration test on both the application and the infrastructure. So the infrastructure provider typically provides, SOC 2 reports or ISO reports, and these are traditionally publicly available. And then us as the vendor, as the service provider of this application, we typically have to have a third-party certified auditor that comes in and does penetration tests on the application, make sure that we are up to snuff on the security and using the latest and greatest capabilities out there to make sure the data is protected. So these are the two things that we often get grilled on in infrastructure and application. And so you just need to be making sure that you're asking your vendors these two things, and they have the appropriate documentation to show you. The next one is policies. So in addition to showing these third-party audits and showing those reports, you want to make sure that the service provider you're dealing with actually has proper policies in place around redundancy, around breach notification, around change management, around disaster recovery and backup policy. So typically you may have to put a mutual NDA in place between you and the service provider before they show you these things. They're typically not listed on a website or publicly available. It's policies that they use internally. but a good service provider will share that information with you under an NDA and show you that, hey, we take this very, very seriously, and we have done our homework, and we've done this hundreds of times, and here's, take a look under the covers and satisfy your needs to make sure that we are doing everything right. And lastly, the people section. So you want to make sure that the people that are running the organization you're going to be working with are experts in their field. They're veterans. They know what they're doing. They have lots of experience. And believe it or not, when we work with very large organizations, they even ask for background checks on all employees. So this is not a common one unless you're working with a really, really big organization, but it's part of our policy now too, internally, is that any new employees has to go through background checks. So just do your due diligence on your vendors that you're working with. And there's lots of standards out there online by doing some simple Google searching for you to locate some cloud vendor evaluation criteria. Lots of free resources out there that you can use as is or modify to your liking. Okay, this is the part I think that everybody's been waiting for. The live demonstration, really taking a look at what Titan File looks like and how it can work in your organization. So let me exit out of these slides. Bear with me here as I get the demo up and running. We've got it pre-staged, perfect. All right, we're good to go, quick and painless. All right, live demo. Let's go through Titan File and let me show you in a 10-15 minute, very high level demo. I'm not gonna dig into a lot of really granular details, just want to give you a flavor so you get a big picture of what the system is all about and what it can do. So here's a login page. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a client login page. So obviously you get a custom login page that's brandable, and you can see here this organization has hooked into single sign-on. So when their employees hit this URL, they don't have to log in. It auto logs them in using their corporate credentials. Once you log in, this is what Titan File looks like. This is the interface. So before we dissect the buttons and kind of the user interface elements that you're seeing on the screen, let's park that for a quick sec, and let me take you on a journey. I want to showcase to you really the simplicity of the platform. It's all about simplicity, and this is our biggest driving factor here. So I want to show you what it looks like. Let's set the stage, kind of set some context. So let's say I'm a legal professional, whether it's an attorney or support staff at a law firm. And my client has never used Titan File. They've never heard of it. They don't have an account. This is going to be absolute first exposure. So I want to really focus on the simplicity of Titan File and show you what it looks like from start to finish, from sender to receiver, so you could see kind of the workflow. So let's get going. So you can see here in the top right-hand corner, I'm logged in as Mike. So Mike is going to first create a new channel. Think of creating a new channel as if you're composing a new email. There's a lot of parallels between how Titan File works and how email works. So keep that in mind. So when I want to send something, I'm going to compose a new channel or create a new channel. It's going to prompt me with a subject or a channel name, just like I would when I'm writing an Outlook message. You're going to have to put a subject line. So I'm going to call this demo or built a group. Next, I want to add my recipients or collaborators. So keeping in mind that I've never communicated with these people before, all I need to know is their email address. Again, I'll go back to the email analogy. If you're sitting in your office today and you want to send something to a brand new client, you don't have to contact the help desk to get anything set up or provisioned in advance. You don't have to get all kinds of details in advance. All you need to know is the email address of the recipient. And so the same behavior is true in Titan File. No IT required. I just need to know the email address of my recipient. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in. This is a test email, obviously, so I'm going to show you what that looks like on the receiving end. And if you want to put in a name, you can for their first name. So this person's name is Victor. Go ahead and add. So as you can see, this person has been added into my communication channel. You can, of course, add as many people as you want, whether you're communicating with one person or thousands of people. We had a client that was doing a class action lawsuit, and they had 2,500 people in one communication thread, and they were posting updates based on court findings to the stakeholders. So the system is scalable, whether it's one-on-one communication or one to very many. In this case, let's keep it to just one for the sake of the example. Next, you want to go ahead and upload your files. Now, whether you want to upload multiple files, individual files, or entire folder structures, you could do that directly from here. So I can go ahead and hit attach files, and I will select multiple documents, keeping in mind that there is no limitations to the file size, the file type, or the number of files I'm uploading. So they quickly upload. Similarly, if I wanted to attach an entire folder structure, I can do so by hitting attach folder. And if you remember back, if you were paying attention earlier in the webinar, I mentioned that we do not use a Java uploader, so there's no Java involved here. This is a native uploader that we've built with the latest and greatest technologies and browsers. So I can simply select the folder, hit upload, and it'll start uploading everything. It'll show it to me in exploded view. When I actually send it, it'll show it back in the folder structure as well. Again, similar to email, once you've attached your files to your message, it's rare for you to send that without some context. So in Titan File, it's not just sending files, but you can include messages as well. This is part of the collaboration between you and the client. So I'll say, hi, Victor. Here's the package of files we discussed. Please review. Something simple. Hit send, and off it goes. So if we take away the commentary and the explanations of what happened, it's really 3 simple steps. Create a channel, add your recipients, upload the files. That's all there is to it to send something out to a person that's never seen Titan File, never heard of it. It's going to be their first exposure. Very, very straightforward. Now let's switch gears real quick and see what happens from the recipient side. So, okay, great, you say, that was pretty slick. I was able to upload a bunch of files. Sounds good. What does it look like from my recipient's perspective to receive this information? So let's go ahead into their inbox. Whether your client is using Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, Outlook, it doesn't matter. They're going to get an email with a subject line demo for ILTA Group. Recall, that's what we chose as our subject line when we created this channel. If we pop open this email, you'll notice that there's actually no attachments in this email. It's simply a notification email. It's fully brandable, so we can customize this email to include the law firm's logo in the top right. This area here at the bottom, the footer, can be customized to include your contact information or your signature. And so in this email notification, we are saying that, hey, Mike has shared with you a handful of files. Here are all the files. And at the bottom, it says, here's the message that was composed within Titan File. Hi, Victor. Here's the package of files we discussed. Please review. So all that the client has to do is hit this big green button called Access Files, and the system is going to automatically provision a guest account for them. So for the first time ever, and they only have to do this once, the first time ever the client accesses something in Titan File, we're going to detect that, hey, wait a second, this person doesn't have an account. Let's create a guest account for them so that they're going to be able to correspond with either the same lawyer or somebody else from that law firm going forward without having to create an account ever again. So it's a one-step process. It takes 2 seconds. Just have to set my own password, hit proceed to files, and you can see here instantaneously, I'm now logged into Titan File in the top right-hand corner as Victor, the recipient. So very, very simple workflow to actually get to where the files are. And now I'm logged in and I could do a handful of things. So what can I do? You may say, well, the interface looks very, very similar to what it looked like for the sender. And you're absolutely right. So what can the recipient do, or what can your client do? So it could really do 2 things. One, go down to where the files are. You'll notice there's a download all button. So with one click, I can download the entire package. In this example, there's tens of thousands of files in one go. So you can imagine how helpful this download all button is. Alternatively, you can handpick individual files simply by clicking on them, and it will download that file alone. Every time you download a file, of course, it's going to send an email notification to the recipient saying, hey, the file's been accessed. So aside from being aside from making it super easy for them to retrieve files that have been sent to them, it gets better. They can actually send stuff back to you too. So it's a two-way communication platform, just like email. You can send and you can receive. And so sending is as simple. I can compose a message, saying, thanks, Mike, got the files. Here's a supporting doc. Maybe it's a signed document. Maybe it's something they missed. Go into the demo file, pick the file, hit attach, click send, and off it goes. And you can see here, we're in the conversation tab. You can see we're in the conversation tab, which is the main view, and the messages are threaded in that view. So you're actually having a conversation with your client. It's not disjointed messages. I send something, they send something back. They're completely separate and unrelated. If it's around the same topic, it's going to be all in one place. So if we're dealing about a specific matter or a specific transaction, we can have that back and forth collaboration right here in the conversation tab, directly in Titan file, all in one place, nicely organized, of course, date and time stamped. Now, if you want to go back to a more simple view, which is more traditional files and folders listed without all the messages and the conversations, which what we're mimicking now is email, to simply switch into the Files tab. And you could see here, my files are sorted in files based on file name, so I can sort those based on file name. There's the demo folder that we uploaded earlier with all the files listed underneath it. So here's all the files from that folder. So we uploaded that structure as is from our computer. There's a search capability. You could see who's uploaded the file based on the owner. And of course, you could see when it was uploaded based on date. So you can work interchangeably between the conversation tab or the files tab. It's completely up to you which view you prefer more. Of course, there's also that history thread that I mentioned. So this history thread shows every activity that's been taking place on the platform. The two main things that I mentioned during the slides was our clients care about when things have been sent. So you can see here date and timestamp proving that Mike sent something in this channel. And we want a record of when things are being accessed. So you can see here, this is a date and timestamp confirmation that Victor accessed that one specific Gowling success story when I individually clicked on that one file. And as I mentioned, we want to make things not only easy to put in, but easy to export from this little, let's go back into the sender, Mike. So as the legal professional, I can easily export this conversation thread if I need to keep a record of what's been said, or export the history into a CSV file. So making it super simple to capture what's happening in Titan file externally. So at a very high level, that's the basics of Titan file, making it super simple to be able to share information back and forth with your clients through a web-based application. There is one thing that I want to show you, another component to the platform, since we have a couple more minutes before we get into Q&A. So there's the web-based applications, which is what I showed you now. There's a lot more features and granularity that we didn't get into, but at a high level, that's what I wanted to show you today. We can definitely dig further on a personalized demo. I mentioned that there is the Outlook plugin, if you recall throughout the slides. So there is an Outlook plugin or add-in, if you will, that allows you to send stuff directly out of Outlook. And then the last piece of the puzzle is something called the secure deposit box. And the idea behind the secure deposit box is making it super simple for your clients to be able to send you stuff when they don't have a Titan file account and you haven't used Titan file with them. So imagine, your client saying, hey, I need to send you this batch of documents. I'm going to send it to you on a Dropbox folder. Here's the link. Or I'm going to mail you a USB stick. You could say, no, don't have to do that. Each employee in your law firm is going to have a unique link that they can share externally. And the client comes to this page, simply identifies themselves, name, email address, uploads files. You can see here we've set the limit to 25 gigs, hit send to Alex, and it goes directly into Alex's account. And so every employee in your law firm is going to have their own unique we call it secure deposit box, where your clients can drop things off. And in fact, our clients really put this unique link in their email signature and say, drop off files securely here. Maybe I can show you a quick example. if I have one here, here's one. So you could see here, send file has been included as a link in the actual email signature. We have lots of clients that do this. Very common. Just makes it really easy to receive information from your outside parties. Okay, let's just jump really back in here real quick to wrap things up. So just a couple of things here to wrap things up. So just to recap, why law firms choose Titan File. We are the best-in-class large file transfer solution from a simplicity perspective and from a performance perspective. We have best-in-class security. I mentioned we've got that additional client-side encryption where you have an external party managing the keys, providing you additional level of security that your clients are going to start requiring. The user experience, hopefully the demo drove that home, and you agree that it was super, super simple to use. And ultimately, it's going to save lots and lots of time and money. So just to leave you with a quote from one of our clients, a national firm, Gowling WLG, over 700 legal professionals. So this is a quote from our success story together. The IT director there says, "We really gauge the success of a product by three main things. 1, reliability, 2, usage, and 3, feedback from users." So those are the three things that they looked at when they looked at success of a deployment: reliability, usage, and feedback from users. And shameless plug, Titan File has passed all of these metrics with flying colors. So with that, that ends the webinar component. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to just quickly check with my moderator for questions. I'm going to read them out, answer them together. My contact info is up on the screen. Feel free to get in touch with me by phone or by email. I'd be happy to help answer any questions or give you any more details you'd like to know about Titan File, whether it be a demo or otherwise. So just bear with me here real quick. Just looking into the questions right now. If you have a question, feel free to go ahead and ask using the chat function or the questions function in GoToWebinar. And I'm just going to sort through these real quick and get back to you here. Alrighty, first one, does Titan File work on mobile? So absolutely. Titan File works on any mobile device, in fact, any form factor. So whether you're using an iPhone, a BlackBerry, yep, I said it, BlackBerry, iPad, Microsoft Surface, so any mobile form factor, the platform is optimized to handle those. And we have lots of clients that are working on those mobile devices in and out and absolutely love it. So I invite you to give it a try. Okay, next question. Question about recipients. So do my recipients need accounts? That's a great question. So as I mentioned in the demo, your recipient does not need to have an account in advance. Let me just break out of this slide here real quick and go back into the demo so I can show you what it looks like. Maybe we closed it. Here it is. So your recipients do not need to have a Titan File account in advance. You only need to know their email address in advance. And so when you add them to a Titan File channel for the very first time and send them something, they're going to receive this welcome email. They're going to receive a notification email like this. And when they hit access files for the first time, if they have an account already, if they've used Titan File with you or with another law firm, they're going to go to the login page. They're going to get taken directly to the login page, and they're going to authenticate into the platform that way. If they've never used Titan File before, they're going to get an account created for them in that very simple 5-second one-step log into Titan File. So they don't need to have one in advance. The system will provision one for them as part of the workflow while they're accessing the files that they've been sent. Great question, though. Another question about integration. Do you integrate with Active Directory? Yes, we do. So you can hook this into Active Directory, single sign-on. It works quite nicely there. Looks like we got another question here. Question about the Outlook plugin. Let me just scroll back quickly to that slide to add a visual. Here we are. So the question is, what's the attachment file limit in Outlook? So we have this available in two ways. You can either set it up so that it matches the Exchange limit that you have set up in Outlook, or you can use our upload button, which bypasses your Exchange limit. So it really depends on how you want to use it. If you want to use it so that people can send really, really large files directly out of Outlook, you can use our upload button, and there will be essentially no limits there. Alternatively, you can follow the existing Outlook limits that are built in. So lots of flexibility there on how you want to use that. Got another question here about iManage integration. So can you demonstrate iManage integration? So absolutely. Let me show you how it would work. I don't have iManage installed on this machine, but I can show you how it would work, and that will give you a visual. So throughout the demo, I mentioned that when you upload files, you can either hit the Attach Files button or the Attach Folder button. So we integrate into iManage using a partner product called Link to DMS. And so that's a client-side product that you would have on your machine running. And once it's configured, the way it works is that when you hit the Attach File button, you can actually have it open up the iManage window. So it launches the iManage interface, and you can take a copy of the iManage file directly from there. So instead of having it go to a local dialog box, you have the choice to configure it to go to iManage or to a local dialog box. And so that Link to DMS integration, that's the glue between Titanfile and iManage, and it works very, very slick. We've got tons of clients using it. That's what it does, is when you activate this Attach Files button, it lets you choose where do you want to upload the file from, your local machine, a network drive, or your document management system. And so it takes about 15 minutes to configure that Link to DMS. It's super simple to configure. You basically just need to make sure that it talks to your iManage server, and once it's hooked up, you can attach files directly out of there. And you have the option whether you want to take a copy, check files out, and it keeps a record in iManage that a file was taken out or copied. So it keeps a audit trail there as well. Similarly, on the way back in, so if you receive a file, you can see right now I have it configured so that when I click on the file to download it, it's downloading it to where my Chrome preferences are, my web browser preferences, which for me is in my downloads folder. But you can have it configured so that it downloads. You have the option to file it directly into the appropriate matter folder in iManage if you want to take it directly there versus bring it in locally first. Great question. Thanks, Donna. We got another question here about what kind of branding is available. Can I use my logo? Yes, absolutely. So lots of branding options available. So first place where you can change the branding I mentioned is the custom login page. So you'll have a custom login page with a custom link and logo. The emails that go out will have your logo instead of ours. And of course, in the application, top left corner will have your logo instead of ours as well. So when you and your clients log in, they'll see your logo, and it'll look like your portal. So lots of really great branding capabilities there. Another question about integration. Looks like a popular topic today, which is great. Does Titanfile integrate with eDocs as well? So eDocs is the open text document management system. I think it's a competitive product to iManage. And yes, so through our Outlook plugin, I'll just bring that back up on the screen. Make sure I've got the right screen sharing here. Yep. So through our Outlook plugin, the way that we built the Outlook plugin is in such a way that whether you're using iManage, NetDocs, eDocs, World Docs, as long as you have those document management systems hooked up into Outlook, so that when you compose an email today, you can pull a file directly out of there. Titanfile doesn't interrupt that workflow, and so you could still bring in files directly from the DMS into Outlook, and the send button you hit at the end of that workflow. So we don't change the way that you attach files into the Outlook message today. So that stays the same, and so if you have it integrated with your document management system, that continues to be the way as well. Great question. And of course, we have lots of eDocs clients, both government and law firms using eDocs, so they're using that actively as well. Another question here that I missed earlier, apologies for that. What about access controls when sending documents to multiple people? So I can speak broadly about that, but maybe you can specify a little bit more what you mean. So let me go back into the view here. Apologies for flipping back and forth, but I think it adds context, so work with me. The way that Titanfile works is that whoever's in the channel has access to the files in that channel. And so as you can see here in my view, I have a lot of different channels. They're about different topics, different matters. So for example, the one that we did here today together, the example is demo for ILTA group, there's Mike and Victor in that channel. But Mike has multiple channels. You can see he's got one with Eversheds, and there's John in there. He's got one with the Oslo Holdings, and there's Emily and Sarah. So I have multiple matters or multiple transactions happening in different channels. However, when I flip into the view of my recipient, Victor, just to demonstrate that, let's collapse this. You could see that Victor only sees the channel that he's been exclusively invited into. So Victor doesn't see stuff you're dealing with other clients on. He didn't see the Oslo Holdings. He didn't see the Eversheds channel. He only sees the channel that he's in. And so the way that access works within Titanfile is that if you're in that channel, you have access to the files in that channel. And so one common example we see is, if a admin assistant or a paralegal gets added to a file, he or she can be added halfway through a transaction, and they can now see everything that's in the channel. Okay, thanks, Donna. Donna said that she got the answer that she was looking for, so I'm glad we were able to address that. And just to kind of follow up on that for those that are wondering, so adding users and removing users is super simple. So if Victor is no longer on this communication and he's been removed from the file, simply by hovering over his name, I can with one click remove his access and he's been gone. My history is going to show that Mike removed Victor, and that person no longer has access to that channel. It's completely gone. Excellent questions so far today. Thanks for everybody's participation. Just going to do one last check here to make sure we didn't miss anybody. And it looks like that is it. So looks like we're ahead of schedule. You get 2 minutes back in your Friday. Thanks everybody for your participation. I really appreciated all the questions and your attention. If you have any questions that come up offline or would like to chat further, I will leave my contact information up on the screen for the remainder. But that officially concludes our webinar, and I wish everybody a fantastic weekend. Thanks, everyone.